All right, there we are. Good morning, everyone. It looks like we've got a good number of participants already with us. We're going to give everyone a few more minutes to join before we kick off today's session. But thank you all for joining the webinar today. Excited to get started. I feel like we need either elevator music or awkward hold music, something like that would be appropriate for this time, but alas, that's not the case. So, Kyle, is there actually that much snow where you're at? Your background is glorious.
You know, this isn't a recent picture, but we just
Okay.
got a ton of snow in Arizona. Winter
Oh,
has finally
awesome.
arrived, and in southern Colorado too. So we're stoked.
Hmm. That's awesome. Yeah, we finally got snow up here in Montana yesterday as well. So it finally feels like winter.
Awesome.
Hmm. And Lewis, you're probably happy to not be having snow right now.
Indeed, I am in Florida, so although it did get very cold a couple weeks ago, that was very unusual for us. We had to bust out the jackets behind the closets. So
Yes, a
yeah.
rare occasion for you. Whereas up in Montana, we've just been waiting to actually wear our snow boots. It's like, was it ever going to come?
Mhm.
So, all right. We'll give everyone about one more minute to join. I see that we've added a few more participants. I was just going to wait until 11:03 before we kick things off. All right. And there we have it. We might have a few more people join us in the next few minutes, but I think let's go ahead and get started. So, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining the Ascent 360 Accesso Mountain Capital Partners Group webinar. We're very excited to have everyone today. We're going to be talking about going beyond the basics and what actually drives guest loyalty and unforgettable experiences across destinations and seasons. So, with that in mind, we're going to do a little bit of a fireside chat with the three of us, but we will also have time for a Q&A at the end. So those of you that are tuning in, please feel free to throw your chats in or your questions in the chat or in the Q&A section, and we'll be sure to get to those at the end. We also will have a couple of polls thrown in throughout the fireside chat, so you guys can engage with us there. So that's the layout of today's webinar. To get us started, I'd love to start with introductions for those of us that are here presenting to you. So Kyle, would you be willing to kick off the introductions?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Kyle Swatsky. I'm on the MCP marketing team. I help our teams identify efficiencies, work with our customer data platforms, emails, coach and develop teams, as well as oversee some of our resorts and properties, marketing. And so I'm kind of all over the place. We know that the industry has been ever evolving, and marketing has been ever evolving. So I'm I'm kind of wherever I'm needed.
You wear many hats and you wear them well. Mhm. Lewis, what about yourself?
My name is Luis Aguilas, so I'm the Senior Director of Product at accesso. So I oversee our ski solutions. So that is Cirrusware and Paradox. So this was a very interesting webinar for me because we have integrations with Cirrusware and Paradox into Ascent 360, and we've gotten some really great feedback from our clients on, the types of tools and functionality that they have that they didn't have in the past. So, um, but yeah, I oversee the ski solutions there, and Ascent 360 is kind of one of our premier partners in, especially on the marketing side of the house. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and we love working with you guys. When I get a new client that's on one of your platforms, Seriousware Paradox, it always goes much smoother. So we appreciate the partnership there.
No
Last
doubt.
but not least, my name is Lauren, and I am a senior client success manager here at Ascent 360. And I have the pleasure of working with both Accesso and all of the Mountain Capital Partner mountains that currently use our platform. Also, just want to put the caveat, I might slip in MCP instead of Mountain Capital Partners. So just so everyone knows, those are the same thing as we go throughout today. And as Lewis mentioned, we have a very strong partnership with Accesso. We have this all-in-one platform here at Ascent 360, where your customer data platform, where you can send email marketing, SMS marketing, and being able to integrate seamlessly with Accesso has been a big benefit to a lot of clients. So There we have it. This is your panel for today. So why don't we go ahead and jump into our fireside chat. And to start that, we're actually going to do a poll, if we can get that up here on the screen for our attendees to see. There it is. Okay, so our first question, how are you segmenting the majority of your marketing campaigns today? So we'll give everyone a few seconds to answer that, and we'll look at the results together. Okay, seeing a lot of segmentation. Okay, I'll go ahead and share results. It failed to share, so um, I'll just read it out. A majority of our listeners said that segment-based targeting with pass holders, families, so on and so forth, is the way that they segment their marketing campaigns today, with a few people doing batch and blast as well. So, all right, fantastic. So that was our first poll. Let's go ahead and jump into the discussion. Kyle, with that kind of in mind, how has MCP's approach to guest loyalty evolved over time?
Yeah, Lauren, that's a great question. And I would normally just say, ask me tomorrow again, because it changes so quickly and
Yep.
rapidly, right? But it's been fun to see how we've approached how we segment and how we communicate with our guests to increase our guest loyalty, right? I'm thinking back years and years ago when the batch and blast was a lot more relevant to us, right? We'd kind of
Mhm.
use that as a baseline, see who's opening emails, and then maybe retarget those guys based on click rates and whatnot, and so on. But when it comes to Seriousware and developing those products, and then that integration with the CDP is 360, the guesswork it doesn't really have to exist anymore, which is pretty cool. The ease of use, having kind of a one-stop shop where all that data gets cleaned and filtered into Ascent 360. We now have this information and we can hyper target, easily segment to our audience and make sure that we're talking to the right people. And what have we seen from that? Increased guest loyalty, right? Increased guest retention too. So it's been a really fun ride to see how, grassroots efforts evolved into the digital landscape. The digital landscape was kind of that batch and blast approach, and now it's really becoming, hey, we can talk directly to you, which is very, very powerful.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then just to add to that, I found the answer to that poll quite interesting, the segmentation side, right? And that is where
Mhm.
we've worked hard on this integration, right? Because I could see a few series for clients here. There is certain terminology and there are certain areas of Seriousphere that anyone that uses Seriousphere and even Paradox, right? You just know and you see that exact same terminology then at Send 360. So when you're logged into that, you're seeing the exact same way that it's set up, which to me makes it very easy then to segment because the way that it's configured and being sold from e-commerce or on site is exactly then what you're seeing on the other end, and then how you
Mhm.
can market to that. So it's a lot of work that goes into making sure that what we're doing from the system of record side is being fed into a system like this in the most intuitive way possible, right? So in that way, if you pick it up, you go, oh yeah, I get it. This is exactly how I have it set up in Seriousware, right? So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And the evolution of both partnerships has been really fun to watch between Ascent 360 and accesso, but also having more and more MCP mountains using both platforms. We've really been able to grow the strategy and the strategic approach that each mountain takes because they're using the same tools. So it's allowed that strategy to really improve over time. So, Kyle, how do you ensure the guest experience feels consistent across the different mountains and seasons?
Yeah, that is always a challenge, right? We love to give a lot of our resorts autonomy in how they approach this. At the end of the day, the people on site are going to know their audience best, their guests best, right? So when it comes down to the messaging and those best practices, we're going to leave it up to them. But with that being said, again, it comes down to the integration, how we're setting up these products on the back end, how we're integrating them into Ascent, making sure that we're sharing best practices across resorts, right? That way, we're not reinventing the wheel 12 times with 12 of our resorts, right? We can go ahead and easily segment this, take our best practices, look at our open rates, our click-through rates, our dashboards on Ascend 360, and share those insights so easily. So it's pretty simple. It's great. We kind of like to work off each other and work collectively.
Yeah, and it really comes through, especially with your overarching "you belong here" messaging. It's cool because each of your mountains is able to keep their brand voice, but then there's still that MCP "you belong here," and it does give that consistency, regardless of how many mountains your customers actually visit. Some of them are pretty loyal to just one, but it's nice that you're able to keep that communication similar across the board. So, I guess what role does data play in delivering that "you belong here" message that guests have come to expect?
Oh boy, working in the ski industry is pretty awesome. I mean, we get a lot of data from our customers, which is pretty cool, right? I mean, when it comes down to boot sizing, how many times you visited, how many times you've skied, right? We have access to this wealth of information. And in the past, it's been hard to actually capitalize and use that information, right? You could spend hours and hours kind of cleaning this up manually, kind of looking through running different reports. But once that gets integrated into Ascent for us, we've been able to use the audience builder and just take that data, take how many visits, right? And target those people. Have they opened an email? Plus, have they visited this year? Have they not visited this year? Is it a powder day? And how do we segment and target and talk directly to those people?
Mhm. Lewis, would you add anything to that based on your experience with mountains like MCP and others? How data
No,
plays that?
yeah, I
Okay.
know that I yeah completely agree there with how Kyle is kind of positioning that. Yeah, I have nothing to add. He explained it perfectly, actually.
Sweet.
Mhm. That's great. Okay, Lewis, I do have a question for you. From your perspective, what are the most important moments in guest journey where technology can make the experience feel truly seamless?
Yeah, so I guess at accesso, what we always say it's the before, during, and after, right? So we are what we always think about, right? And we look at our client base, and we have massive resorts, small in between, right? And all of them offer all types of different things that you it would be great if you knew before you arrived, right? So where we see a lot of engagement and customer satisfaction is when, first of all, when they know what there is to do, what's available, right? And they are well prepared before they arrive. And then maybe while they are there, then especially if they have a multi-day visit, then now they are aware of some interesting new things that they may not know about. And then afterwards, right, on since you visited and you did these things, then here is a very custom message that I get back. And then that is where all the technology points then kind of all converge together to create a very personalized experience that I get. And I'll give an example. I have an annual pass to one of our local parks here in Orlando, and they never know anything that I did or have or want to do. So, for example, I buy a special event ticket and I have purchased that, all good. And then a month later, I get an email saying, "Hey, did you know we have this special event? You should buy this ticket." And I'm like, "I already bought it. This is not right. This is a waste of everyone's time." So, having very intelligent communication based on the data that we have, right, then you get much more engagement on that.
Mhm. I agree. Kyle, do you want to add anything to that
No, I
before
just
I
think
do?
that's such an important data point, right? In the past, it could have just been, hey, these automations every 30 days send out this communication. But Lewis has already made that purchase, right? He's already done that. Now we
Mhm.
have, conditional logic on the back end in our audience builder where we can check against these things, and we want to make sure that we're doing that.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with what both of you said. I think my favorite aspect is the ability to do product specific pre-arrivals. So with Sirius, we're sending us over the exact product that person purchased. We might send like a private lesson specific pre-arrival compared to your generic day ticket or just generic lesson. Being able to give them the right information that they need for their unique visit and giving it to them in advance. I think it was Nordic Valley last year won some kudos for their pre-arrival. The layout of it was so user friendly. It really helped people understand where to park of all things, and it was just really it was beneficial. So the industry shout out was well earned by them, and it's because they can also tell that story using the data that we have in place. So that's my favorite aspect of that, at least. Okay, with that in mind, let's go ahead and move on to our second poll question that will hopefully pop up on our screens shortly, but I'll go ahead and read it out loud so you can start thinking. Which of the following marketing capabilities are the most valuable for your resort near term? You can select all that apply. Some good options here. We'll give everyone a few minutes to reply. Okay, starting to see some answers coming through. Definitely more of a mixed bag than last time. This is good. Okay. You should be able to see the results up on your screen. It looks like the most important one is having a unified view of guest data across ticketing, lodging, and on-property spend, which happens to be accesso and Ascent 360 specialty, followed by the delivering seamless guest experience across seasons and between visits. And I think that really speaks to what we were just talking about, the data really helping us communicate effectively to the guests. Awesome. All right. Moving on. Okay, so now we're going to talk about marketing before, during, and after the visit. We just had the perfect segue from our last conversation into this. So, Kyle, I've got a lot of questions for you, but Lewis, feel free to jump in. Kyle, what are the most effective ways you engage guests before they even arrive on site?
I think you kind of touched on this already, right? Our pre-arrivals. That's such an easy way to communicate with guests before they arrive. Thinking about Nordic Valley, we faced some challenges over there, and we had to kind of rearrange our base area and what that would look like to a guest, where to go. They were unsure. We've got a lot of loyal customers. We've got a lot of locals who just didn't know how the process would work to get a ticket, rentals, lessons, whatever that may be. So it was pretty simple. Again, Lauren, you hit the nail on the head. We can do product-specific pre-arrivals, right? So we can take our start dates of those products. We can target them 24 hours before, 48 hours, whatever your preference is, and include things like wayfinding and signage and those expectations for our guests. When should I arrive for a lesson, right? Where do I pick up my rentals, tickets, F&B, retail, etc., and provide more of that information. In the past, again, we think about as we moved over to the digital landscape, you think what would be the most important thing when I get to a resort? Maybe signage, right? Where to park, things like that. You'd think the whole customer journey or customer flow. But really, now that we've got tools where we take that guesswork out and we can actually communicate with them, we can provide them with all of that information right there. They're already engaged with us, they're subscribed with us, they want to know this information. Let's just put it right in front of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and being able to do it so automatically for your different resorts. The ones that have lodging use it in a completely different way than the ones that don't, right? Like the basic ski pre-arrival is one thing, but also being able to talk to the people that are going to be staying with you is also really powerful. And the ability to set it and forget it, like you mentioned, like making sure the timing is right, but we know that that message is going to go out consistently throughout the season, depending on who's coming and when.
That's
So,
right.
mhm. Okay, what about during the visit? What touch points matter the most for creating a standout guest experience then?
Oh boy, tons of things. Right now, we're actually talking on mountain signage, things like that. Overall, who's going to be that actual physical first touch point, and what does that experience look like? We've got other opportunities, leveraging Seriousware on site when it comes to rental check-ins and how we can streamline that process for our guests and really just make that a seamless process. Some of our resorts do a massive, massive amount of rentals and lessons, and thanks to Seriousware and the setup there, we've been able to really streamline that process from our boot pickups, boot sizing, all the way through to your ski pickups and getting you on snow faster. So it's been, yeah, really beneficial there.
That's awesome. That is an important element of the guest experience because that can be one of the most stressful parts of visiting a mountain. So that's awesome.
Mhm.
Okay, and then after guests leave, what strategies have been the most successful in bringing them back?
That's another great question, right? Yeah, it's one thing to capture this guest, right, and convert them over, but to get that retention is so critical for business, right? To get that loyalty and increase that guest experience. And so I can't quite remember how many different fields we have access to, but let's call it around 50, I think, with the Ascent 360 we can target, right? We can hyper target based on geolocation. Is it going to snow? Are they going to come that day? Their visitation date, again, their product start date. So we can set up a post-arrival campaign now that talks directly to this guest. We've got other, data points in place where we can build upon this. But at the end of the day, if I took a group lesson we can invite them back. We can start with a thank you campaign. We can start with an invitation back. Here's what's going on with our lessons. Here's what's going on with our events, maybe some of our ancillary outfits to get them to come back. Here's the forecast in one of those post arrivals, and so on, with all the kind of in-depth things you can do with the scent, webhooks, etc. Uh, the possibilities are pretty endless now.
Mhm. I've liked watching your mountains go beyond just email as well, using the data that we get from Seriousware into the platform. Some of them are using it to build audiences for direct mail touch points to be used throughout the year, not just right after a visit, as well as using those audiences in paid social, just to continue to add more touch points to remind people to come back and have them thinking about the good time that they had while on site.
That's right.
Mhm. Okay, Kyle, one more question for you before I have another one for Lewis. How do you balance promotional messaging with the experience-driven storytelling?
Well, I think, if you kept up with the digital landscape and emails and whatnot, there's been a lot of controversy over how emails are accepted these days, right? Are open rates dropping? Is engagement dropping? Is it just flooding your inbox and whatnot? And so you always have to start with just the segmentation and who you're talking to. There always has to be some sort of experiential messaging these days, or some
Mhm.
sort of hook that is relevant to the audience you're talking to. If you're not doing that, yes, your email is going to get lost, and eventually they're going to unsubscribe from you, right? They're going to get cleaned out of your database. So, one approach we love to take, and one thing that's been my guiding light, is I approach all of our campaigns with the "How can I help you" mentality. At the end of the day, if I'm not helping the guest when I'm communicating them in one way, shape, or form, uh, I'm not doing them a service. There's no reason they need to be answering that email. And so, if it's just a promotional coupon that just says, "Hey, get 10% off," no one's really going to care about that. We're not going to see a huge redemption rate. But why does this guest actually care? How are we helping them? And then how do we get them back up to the mountain?
Mhm. And I think your teams do a really good job balancing the messages that they send based on the audience they've created, whether it's product specific segmentation or even some of the geo targeting, the way they talk to locals versus non locals, kind of knowing where their customers are in some of those bigger hubs that aren't necessarily local to the mountain, but they know they draw in from those other regions and they speak to them differently, which I think really benefits that guest experience and then the engagement as well. So that's been fun to see. All right, we're going to go ahead and kind of shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit more about technology. So, Kyle, I'll give you a break, and this one, Lewis, is for you. How do integrated systems like accesso and Ascent 360 help reduce the guesswork in guest marketing?
Yeah, so that comes down in my point of, so I'm on the product side, right? So we lead some large my product team leads some large engineering teams. Many of those engineers work on our internal systems, but then many of those work on our integrations with partners. The level of integration you have with partners varies quite a bit depending on how much that partner wants to invest in that integration and how important it is to them, right? So we always try to push the limits there on what we could do because we know what the other end can look if that partner is willing to invest, right? So um,
Mhm.
having that data synchronized and integrated in the best way possible is kind of forefront for us. At the same time, we don't always know exactly what's happening on the other end, or for example, how Kyle is using it, or what limitations Kyle's facing because the data may not be correct, right? So then that's where I kind of like, and actually just this week, we got an email from Ascent 360 and saying, hey, we saw this specific issue with this client, and we think if we get the data like this, we can actually open up and unlock all of this functionality. That's very
Mhm.
interesting to us because it's low effort for us, huge value for the client, right? So
Mhm.
working very closely together, then it's important for us as an integrated partner, strategy and where we want to go with that, and giving the most that we could possibly give to the clients that are using our integrated product.
Mhm. Kyle, would you add anything to that?
No, I think that's pretty spot on. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I like the partnership that we have going on right now, that open dialogue, even when we get into conversations where it involves all three people, right? Like one of the mountains and then both Accesso and Ascent 360, like we're willing to really work together to figure out how to put a solution in place. And maybe it's more custom than not, But regardless, we're going to get something in place that really helps accomplish the marketer's end goal and making the most of guests' stay or their visit overall. So I would agree. Now, Lewis, many resorts worry that adding new systems creates more complexity. How does accesso think about simplifying operations while still enabling that precision targeting and engagement?
Yeah, I guess the way that I always see this is, it is the best of breed approach. Although I have a large team, the real reality is we cannot be the best at every single thing that a resort needs. It's just not possible, right? So then that is where we start to get into, all right, what are we going to be really good at? So we're going to be really good at ticketing, e-commerce, rentals, lessons, right? That whole side of the
Mhm.
house, that is what we are going to be truly focused on. Then there's those other areas that, it doesn't quite make as much sense. So then that is where let's look at partners that do this really well. So it is right? Finding that right balance. So then that way, we're adding a new system in the sense that there is a partner that's being used here, but at the same time, it is the best of breed of what they do.
Mhm.
And then that way, the actual person at the resort, that their job is to either manage a ticketing system with Sears for a Paradox or managing marketing campaigns, they're doing it at Send 360, right? And they have the best tools at their disposal to do that, right? So that's kind of the way that we think about this, and we evaluate these types of things literally weekly on is this something that we want to do, and do we think we're going to be great at it, or should we be looking at integrating with partners in that case, so that way the end result is the best end result that it can be.
Mhm. Kyle, how would you say the partnership between Ascent 360 and accesso has simplified marketing for your teams?
Yeah, in addition to simplifying marketing for our teams, it's really created a strong cohesion between our guest services teams, our IT teams, and our marketing teams too, right? Lewis hit the nail on the head right there. We've got people who are really good at managing the ticket platform, and then we've got the marketing teams who are managing it through Ascent 360. Without us working together, understanding those products, what we have set up
Mhm.
through Seriousware, we can't leverage that through marketing, right? So the simplification, again, I'm going way back here, but when you're using multiple platforms, one for your audience targeting, then you're importing those audience lists, then you might have to be designing things. Having Ascent as a one-stop shop where we can set all these things up, those automations, those scheduled events, has truly been a game changer and a time saver for us. We're seeing
Mhm.
higher than ever open rates. We're seeing higher than ever engagement rates, and my teams continue to just kind of blow me away what they're doing. I'm like, whoa, I look like back in the day when I was really hands-on on this stuff. Like, I guess I didn't know what I was doing. You guys are the pros now, so it's pretty rad.
Yeah. And I love seeing that cross team collaboration. Like, I feel like this is the most I've ever seen your mountains talk to each other. I know I have limited insight, but they're really sharing strategies. Like, maybe this email is new for them and they're just letting each other know, like, hey, we built this audience. This is how you can do it too. And because they're all on Serious, where they know just they can speak that same language, they know
Okay.
both tools and platforms. So just it's a time saver. They can train each other without even needing to come to Lewis or myself for help. And that's been really cool to see them have a little bit more autonomy while using these tools. Yeah, it's been powerful. So, Lewis, another question for you. What does a connected tech ecosystem look like in practice for a ski or all season destination, kind of across the board?
Yeah, when you look at what connected tech ecosystem is huge, right? And what that means. So we look at it a couple different ways. So we have lots of tools and products inside of Accesso's disposal, right? We have F&B, we have mobile app, right? So we are connecting those in the best way possible. And then, of course, like I've talked about, we have our connected integrations. But it's thinking about it from the client and the guest point of view is what we try to do often is put ourselves in their shoes, right? Because ultimately, most people that are using these systems don't understand or even care how they're connecting behind the scenes, right? What they do care
Mm-hmm.
about is that it works as expected and I have what I need at my disposal to do my job. So,
Mm-hmm.
how do we connect those systems as efficiently as possible that requires the least amount of time for the IT staff or for the staff that are using the front end system? So, Sort
Mhm.
connected tech system means um, that you don't notice the behind the scenes and how things are connected. It just
Mhm.
works. Now, nothing's perfect, right? And and things happen, and how quickly can we resolve that? And how quickly can we resolve that with our internal connections and our partner connections is also really important too, that
Mhm.
we look at. But um, yeah, so that's our kind of connected approach there when it comes to
Yeah.
technology.
Yeah, I like that view of it of we don't need to know what's all going beyond we don't need to know what's going on behind the scenes. We just want to make sure that it works. And I think that that's a really good view of it. It kind of goes back to what Kyle was saying of if the email doesn't provide some sort of value to the customer, of like how is this helping you, then it doesn't necessarily matter. But we need the tools in the background to really work. I don't know if you guys have heard about the book Unreasonable Hospitality. It's a good read. I cannot remember the author right now, but I one of my coworkers sent me an article about applying those same standards of unreasonable hospitality to email and how we might shift the way we talk to our customers. And I think by having strong technology in place like accesso and Ascent 360, you can actually start having those conversations with your guests using your technology suite instead of it always having to be in person. We can start to know our customers a little bit better and speak to them the ways they want to be spoken to. So I think that's how I would answer that one. All right, Kyle, what are some real world examples of how accesso and Ascent 360 have enabled MCP to enhance the guest experience without adding that complexity?
Yeah, I'm just going to go back to pre-arrivals.
Yeah.
This is just the easiest one of all. This is the most low-hanging fruit. Um, we just find the product the guest purchased, we find their start date, and we can send them an email and a touch point of everything, every expectation they have. It doesn't get any easier than that at the end of the day. Before it would be maybe manual sends, maybe building these things out, sending them once per week. Really, what Seriesware and Ascent 360 has done is just completely take out the guesswork, right? There is no longer a reason with all the data we have, whether it's pixels on our website, whether it's all the data from Seriesware, we shouldn't be guessing on who we're talking to when their product starts or what's happening. And so that is truly the easiest one that I would say that takes all the complexity out.
Yeah. And then if I may, I'll add on to that just because I get to work with so many of your mountains. I love that we have that unified POS and ticketing system from accesso feeding into Ascent 360, because then each mountain is able to speak to their guests in both a timely manner, but in a meaningful manner. I think we haven't really touched on the cross season aspect as much, but I think about Arizona and how they have a gondola. And people that use the gondola are not usually your season pass holders. Like you've got to talk to that group in a very different way. And if we didn't have that ticketing system or the transactional history to be able to know, we wouldn't be able to talk to them in a unique way that really is actually meaningful to them because most of them really don't want to hear about your season pass sales.
Correct.
But some of your season pass holders might care about the gondola and just being able to segment in that way. So that's one of the examples that comes to mind.
Great example. And that's not just unique to Arizona with scenic gondola rides in the summer. You'll see this across the industry when it comes to skiing, mountain biking, or a lot of resorts also have golf courses like ourselves,
Mhm.
right? There's a lot of crossover there, but we still need to make sure that we're speaking appropriately to those audiences.
Hmm. And cross-selling or upselling where appropriate as well. I
That's right.
agree. All right. Well, we're coming to the end of our fireside chat portion. I've got a few more questions for us. We're going to shift gears again and talk a little bit more about the lessons learned and maybe giving advice for other destinations. So, Lewis, we'll start with you, but Kyle, I also want your input on this one. If another resort is just starting their guest data journey, what is the first step you'd recommend? So, Lewis first.
Yeah, so usually the way this works in reality is we get asked, do you guys have the capability to do a lot of these kind of advanced functionality, right? To reach out to our guests. And usually our answer is we could do some basic things, but it's likely not what you're looking for. So it's more about just kind of, reach out to us. A lot of our clients reach out to us because they first want to know how exactly does this connect? How much work is this going to be for me? Is this automatic? Is it manual? Right? There's all those types of questions that we're happy to answer for any of our existing clients that opens up a ticket with us. And so that way we could walk through the flow. Usually that's the first step is understanding the flow and what that data looks like, right? And you want to do that before you get marketing involved because you don't want to get marketing excited if the integration is going to be a lot of work for me, right? So
Mhm.
usually we talk to our clients about that, how everything works, and then from there, then we kind of pass it on to Ascent 360, so in that way they could go into the real nuts and bolts of how, how it works, get a demo, and typically we usually get a reply back that is like, yeah, this is awesome. When can we enable this thing, right? So I always recommend starting with, how is this going to be actually integrated and understanding that. And then once you get that little bit of level of knowledge there, then we could move on for that. We also have documentation as well in our knowledge base that is pretty thorough and all how all this works, and we're happy to share that as well.
Yeah, that's a great resource. Kyle, what would you say?
Just start capturing the data right out of the gates, right? If you don't have the data, down the road, you're not going to be able to leverage that data. We came in the age of information here, where we're just overloaded from the internet, everything now, as you guys know, the shifts, artificial intelligence here, and whatnot. It's easier to analyze that data than ever, right? In the past, we've had this plethora of information, and it's sat in the closet, gathered dust for so long. Now you can just feed these things into different LLMs, of course, safely, make sure that that is secure and up to your corporation's policies, but you can analyze that data now, right? And so if you're not using Seriousware, you're not using Ascent, and even capturing that data, cleaning that data, right, and ingesting it, you're so far behind the curve. You need to make sure that you're leveraging those things. The rest comes with time, right? You're going to have these great grand ideas of how you can hyper segment and create these robust campaigns, but then start with those email platforms. Start with the baseline. Is it a pass holder just versus non-pass holder? Then we've got a baseline to kind of compare against, and then really drill down into that personalization.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think it really needs to be that both and approach. Sometimes you get lucky and you've got a marketer that is both super creative and understands the data, but if not, you've got to have those two teams really working together. And so maybe you have your technology partners already in play, but you don't understand the data. I always like to help guests figure out what's their customer journey. Sometimes if we start there, the creative marketer can then back into the data that they need and then come to Seriousware and accesso and say, okay, this is what I'm thinking. What can we do to make it go live? And so I like to start with the customer journey roadmap. We can talk about pre-arrivals, on-site, post-departures, and then we can be like, yes, you can do that. And then also sprinkling in some of those other creative, maybe sometimes guerrilla marketing techniques. And sometimes the data is not needed for those, but maybe it is. Like if we're talking about trying to talk to our locals and get them to come on site for a special event, let's leverage that data. So yeah, customer journey roadmap is where I would start and then find the data that fits those needs. All right, Kyle, looking ahead, what do you think is going to define the future of guest loyalty in the next few years?
Personalization, soul at the end of the day, right? We're seeing a lot of slop out there. We're seeing a lot of the copy just put into these LLMs, right, and regenerated and so on. But at the end of the day, everybody on this call, the marketing professionals and so on, still know their audience best, and we need to make sure that we still have that soul. What we're going to see is our jobs get easier and inherently harder at the same time. And what I mean by that is we're going to be able to do so much more with the use of AI and these LLMs, but we're also going to have to make sure that we're keeping a close eye on these things, that we're not sending out slop to our guests, that our guests are still engaged with us, so that we're providing that "how can I help you" mentality, along with these AI segmented journeys and things like that. So there's going to be a lot more that's going out, but we have to do our due diligence to make sure that it is quality information and helpful information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Lewis, what trends are you seeing across resorts and destinations when it comes to guest expectations and repeat visitation?
That's a good question. It's definitely changed a lot post-COVID, right?
Yeah.
Guest expectations are literally sky high, right? On what you expect to happen before you get there, and most importantly, when you are there, at whichever destination it is, right? Ski on ski. It's almost exactly the same is what we're seeing. It doesn't even matter which vertical we're talking about. It's this, I guess expectations are sky high. And it's more about having, and this kind of even outside of what we're talking about here, but it's more about having the right tools at your disposal as a guest. So for example, can I change the date of my ticket myself? Can I be self-service, right? Can I Can I understand what's happening at the resort myself? Can I ask questions through maybe a chat bot on the site myself, right? We're seeing a lot of that where guests want to be able to self-handle themselves. So in that way, when they arrive, then I don't have to talk to a human maybe and just go and do what I want to do
Mhm.
if I know what I want to do, right? Which comes back into the marketing side. So, and of course,
Mhm.
repeat visitation is a big one on because if you've had someone come and they had a great experience, that is the easiest one to sell back to and have them
Mhm.
come back and then market, here's what's new the next season. And here's what we improved on. And here's, right, there's a lot in there. So yeah, I would say the guest expectations for sure, and we are constantly getting a lot of the feedback, right, are very, very high, and we have to try to determine the best ways to provide the technology and the tools to not only our clients, but all the way down to the guests as well.
Mhm. And really, if you blend both of your answers together, it does go back to that personalization. Like
It
guests want to
does.
know that you know what they want
It
or what they're
absolutely does.
coming there for at the very least. Hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And kind of answering from the Ascent 360 perspective, we're very much AI forward. We're trying to focus on that. How can AI really benefit our customers? Giving Kyle's team more time back. So we're really focusing on making additions to the platform like an AI audience builder and asking that to help you build the audiences instead of trying to come up with it on your own. So still leveraging all of that seriousware data, but letting AI do some of the work for you as well as an AI email designer. So again, just having these tools that really support the marketing team using the data that we've got and freeing them up to be more strategic so that we can focus on personalization and other tools that would really help meet those guest expectations that are at such a high level. So that's great. All right, well, that is the extent of our fireside chat. So we're going to do some Q&A now. It looks like we've got some coming into the chat. All right, this one is from Charlotte. How do you get the customer data from the e-commerce transaction? Does that entirely flow into Seriousware? And there are a few follow-ups, but let's start there.
Sure, it does. So essentially, SiriusWare is the system of record, right? So that is call it the main database, and that database understands and knows where and when and what was sold from anywhere, regardless, assuming that your e-commerce is integrated into SiriusWare. So any transactions that are occurring in e-commerce, those are flowing down into real time into SiriusWare, and then our integration into Ascent 360 is sending that data out to Ascent 360, but Ascent 360 can see if it was purchased on e-commerce or on site, where on site, right? Depending on how you have your sales points configured, you could see all that data on the other end there.
Yeah, it's nice and easy to build audiences based on the products that are flowing through. Like Kyle's team can know how to select exactly the right product and build those audiences accordingly, which is easy. All right. Let's see, an additional question. Kyle, this one might be a little bit more to you, but Lewis, if you have insight on how other brands are doing it, please feel free to jump in. Kyle, how do you market differently to locals versus destination travelers?
Yeah, and this is a great question. I mean, we have many resorts who are more day centric, right? And then we have many resorts that are certainly destination resorts. And this is going to matter. How long do we want the guest to stay, first and foremost, right? Are we communicating to them hours before to get them to drive, let's say, Phoenix to Flagstaff, or are we getting them to visit our resort in Durango, Colorado, Purgatory Resort, and stay with us? So we have to think about those ancillary channels too, right? And what those guests might be interested in. So we're looking at, now our hotel properties, right? And so on. Are we getting them to book there? Are there events that we can send out and market to them? Are we geo-targeting differently through Ascent 360 and who we're talking to? And then how much pre-planning are we giving our guests as well? So there's a lot that goes into this, but ultimately, how can we get these guests to stay longer with us and increase that retention for their one seasonal trip, if you will?
Yeah, that's great. Okay, I'm seeing a few more questions come through. Again, please feel free to throw them in the chat. Um, all right. Lewis, this is for you. With the recent purchase of One Risk by accesso, can pre-arrival emails remind guests that are missing their waivers to sign the waivers before arriving?
Hmm.
It's a good question.
That is a good question. And that is a good feature request there that has an enormous amount of value. Um,
Mhm.
that's a good one. I will take that one back to see what we could do there. There's a bit of complexity there because the Send 360 would need to know that that waiver was signed. So back to integration
Yeah.
patterns, right? How do we figure that out in the best way possible? So then that way, Ascent 360 always knows if it's been signed or not. So there's a level of complexity there that we have to look at. But something that I'll take back is I could see that being very, very valuable because the worst thing in the world is to get on site and then you scan your ticket or pass and then it doesn't work because you didn't sign your waiver. And
Mhm.
yeah, that'd be great if we could improve that.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And to your point, Lewis, like as long as we can get the data to flow through, I think within Ascent 360 we can use some of those dynamic content blocks, and maybe that block appears to the person that hasn't signed the waiver, but is not visible at all to the person that has signed the waiver. So it's just one email that maybe Kyle's team is designing, but the data allows us to have more of the dynamic content within the design.
And we could also do then through SMS as well, right? Through Ascent
Yeah.
360. So I think that gets
Hmm.
very interesting because you're looking at your text message more, especially maybe day prior of arrival. So okay,
Hmm.
that's a great one. Thank you.
Yeah. Kyle, are you seeing the adoption of SMS by your teams more and more, using that to communicate?
Absolutely. Yep. And that's really when we can get into that hyper segmentation too, right?
Hmm.
Really think about who we're talking to because that's in the palm of your hand. And that is one certainly that you need to provide value with your guests, right? Because if you sign up for any SMS platform online and you get a text a day, that might be a little excessive. You
Hmm.
might unsubscribe very quickly.
Hmm. Yeah, I would say from what I've seen with your team, they're really leveraging the SMS tool in a very smart way. They're not spamming people with text messages. They understand the purpose of that channel, and it's easy for them to leverage the same data that we're getting from SeriousWare for email to then also send out the text messages all in that one platform. So it's been a good addition for them. All right, I'm gonna look and see if there are any other questions. Okay, here's a good one. What metrics matter the most outside of revenue?
I guess I'll start. I mean, depends on what we're looking at, right? All the data tells its own story, but all the data together really tells the big picture. And so, if we're looking at our open rates, that's great and all. But then if we start looking at our conversion rates and our click-through rates on those emails, are we actually making an impact? Is this purely an awareness campaign where we're trying to
Mhm.
get a weather report out? That could have value, right? But then we start looking at Google Analytics, Microsoft Clarity, and looking at how these different geographic regions might be interacting to a geographic segment we sent out via email, we can start learning the whole story. So at the end of the day, revenue, I always love tracking revenue. I love revenue attribution through digital platforms and whatnot. But I really want to just see how our guests are engaging. Are they coming back to our websites? Are they brand new users? And are we increasing that retention rate through these platforms? So I wouldn't say necessarily revenue is definitely a directionally accurate reminder of what we're doing, but we need to be looking at all of the data to understand the big picture.
Mhm. Okay, let's see. Are there geolocation SMS tools available? Example, the On Mountain Grill cheese station opens in 30 minutes. Here's a $5 coupon. I would say as of right now, Sun 360 doesn't have that geofencing capability, but Lewis, does the accesso app have that? Can we do push notifications?
We could, yeah. Using our Ski Now app, we do have the geofencing with ability to put a coupon or any sort of messaging up on there as part of the app experience, and then being able to then take action on it as well. So we do have that in the app, yes.
Yep, that makes sense. And as you were speaking, I remembered that within Ascent 360, while we might not have the geofencing, we can do triggered based messaging. So if SeriousWare or one of the other data points coming to Ascent was able to let us know that the guest was there, we could then trigger that message, whether it's an email or an SMS. We would just have to work closely to design that webhook triggered message and make sure that we're sending it to the right people. So That's actually that kind of segues into the next question. Kyle, does MCP use SMS messaging to communicate delayed openings, lift holds, and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, just the integration with platforms makes it so easy to talk to those people, right? We just figure out who's bought a ticket for that day. So the product start date today, and then we can communicate with those guests and just say, hey, we might have, um, some sort of inclement weather, or perhaps it's a, 12-inch powder day. Get up here. And it's pretty easy to communicate those things and what the guests can expect then.
Hmm. Fantastic. All right. Okay. At least one more question if something hasn't come through. What role do pass holders play in year-round loyalty? So Kyle, we'll start that one with you.
This is a tricky one, right? Pass holders love skiing their home mountain at the end of the day. They love traveling. They love the idea of going to all the other resorts. Um, and despite we like to sometimes just think that an outdoor guest is an outdoor guest, right? They love all things outdoors, but we know that simply isn't the case. Not all of our snowboarders golf, not all of our skiers golf, not all of our snowboarders mountain bike, and so on and so forth. So again, we have to look at all of the data to understand the big picture and how to increase that pass holder loyalty for our summer operations, right? So it's tricky. A pass holder might not, always want to do a scenic ride when they've ridden the lift 100 times during the season. But we have to make sure that that value is presented to them, that they feel valued, and uh, that we want them to come back in the summer. So looking at all those data points is just critical to getting that year-round business. But it is a very difficult thing to do, is to understand how can we get the powder hound to come visit us in the summer.
Mhm. I think the other thing is really enabling your season pass holders to be brand ambassadors for you, and being able to talk to them about bringing buddies with them, whether it's the buddy ticket or different events, and maybe it is more in the summertime, and just helping them be the voice for your brand and getting more people to come and engage. So maybe it's not their thing to do the scenic ride, but encouraging them to tell somebody else about it is definitely going to be a powerful tool for you guys.
That's right.
All right. I think that is it in terms of questions, unless anybody else has a last minute submission. So thank you guys for running through the Q&A and answering all of the questions during the fireside chat. I think this was a really good discussion. We got to talk a lot about connected tech ecosystems and how those help teams leverage customer data with that end goal of a better customer experience overall. So hopefully those that were listening in enjoyed the conversation as well. So thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Lewis. 360 and accesso. We do have, hopefully you can see on the slides, there is contact information if you'd like to reach out to either of our teams for more information. But yeah, with that, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you everyone for joining today.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Have a
Bye.
good one.